So I have to tell you something. Ken walks over to me and he says, "Are you really going to read all of that?" And I am, because it's pretty doggone impressive.
Although it won't leave me to have talk about anything, but go ahead.
Yeah. So our speaker tonight has had an amazing career in politics, public service, and education. In fact, if I told you everything that he has accomplished, I would probably take our entire evening tonight. But let me give you the Reader's Digest version. He has served on the San Jose City Council, Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, the Bay Area Quality Management District, the California Air Resources Board, the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, and the Caltrain Joint Powers Authority Board of Directors. He has chaired the San Jose City Council's Blue Ribbon Task Force on Ethics and is a professor at San Jose in political science at San Jose State University. Throughout his professional career, he has worked tirelessly to ensure quality of life, quality of education, and equal access for all throughout the Bay Area. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science from San Jose State University, Master of Arts in Sociology from Stanford University, and a PhD in Education from the Stanford Graduate School of Education. He also completed the Harvard University John F. Kennedy School of Government Program for Senior Executives in State and Local Government, the Ethics in Public Service Program at the Josephson Institute of Ethics, and is a senior fellow at the American Leadership Forum Silicon Valley chapter. So you might ask, what does he do in his spare time? An avid athlete and fitness enthusiast, he has completed over 33 marathons, numerous triathlons, and dozens of obstacle course races all over the country. And he is regularly seen commuting to work on his bike. But most importantly, he has been a tireless advocate and leader for the LGBTQ+ awareness and rights. An accomplished author, his most recent book, Run, tells the story of how LGBTQ+ people in San Jose and Silicon Valley progressed from being political outcasts to becoming a force that has gained political power, equality, and acceptance. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ken Yeager.
Well, thank you, Robert. It's great to be here, and certainly thanking everybody at the Sunnyvale Heritage Park Museum. Everybody's just been great, and it's a lovely museum, as you all know. When I was here a little while ago, I was able to walk around and look at everything, and it's hard to absorb everything in just one visit, so I hope to come back. The stories I'm going to tell probably will be new to most of you. For Carmen and Margaret, some of this you will you probably lived through it along with me. It was, but again, I should also mention that all of these stories are in the book. So if you want to know more about any one of them, it will be there. But as I write in the introduction of my book, there were two main reasons why I wrote Run. The first was to record the progression of the LGBTQ movement from political outcasts to integral community members in San Jose, Silicon Valley. Having lived and breathed queer activism for over 40 years, I felt uniquely qualified to tell this story. Further, San Jose, Silicon Valley has a unique LGBTQ story to tell, separate from San Francisco's. Our history illustrates how queer people in a large suburban city, not an urban one, went about bringing dramatic social change. The lessons learned and the strategies we used may serve as a guide for activists elsewhere when organizing to counter the current uptick of anti-gay hostilities in their communities. I'm keenly aware that the history in San Jose, Silicon Valley could be overlooked or forgotten by others, resulting in the next generation believing that no queer activism took place here. But nothing could be further from the truth. That is why I have tried to recount as much of this crucial history as I could, both in this book and in my history project, Queer Silicon Valley. I want to take you back to the mid-70s, very important time. This was at the beginning of the gay rights movement. Laws prohibiting discrimination based on sexual orientation could not get passed at the state or the federal level. So there was no protections. I mean, that's how far back we're going. Zero. Because you couldn't get any laws passed at the state or national level, LGBTQ activists turned to cities. And a number of liberal college towns began to pass these non-discrimination laws. And based on this success, LGBTQ leaders across the country began to believe that the country would support these type of measures. And by far the most well-known city to enact such a law was Miami in 1977. But to the surprise of many, this led to an unexpected backlash as the newly formed evangelical right hijacked the issue from being about civil rights to one about the immoral gay lifestyle. And we've seen this in many different times, but the issue should have been non-discrimination, but it was about, they turned it into the immoral gay lifestyle. And that movement would give rise to people like Anita Bryant, Jerry Falwell, and Pat Robertson with their Save Their Children campaign. Their tagline was, "Homosexuals can't reproduce, so they must recruit." They quickly gathered enough signatures to place a referendum on the ballot. Unfortunately, Miami voted overwhelmingly to repeal the non-discrimination ordinance. Christian extremists found a gold mine. I mean, this is the first time this had happened. The gold mine is similar to what is happening today with trans rights and gender affirming care. They went to all of the cities that had passed non-discrimination ordinances, overturning all of them except for one. And as it happened, both of these nationwide movements arrived in San Jose and Santa Clara County at the same time in 1979. There we go. After 6 hearings, because the Board of Supervisors had to approve this ordinance, but after 6 hearings and 25 hours of testimony, mainly by evangelical Christians, the Board of Supervisors voted 4-1 to pass the non-discrimination ordinance. With less fanfare, the San Jose City Council took a similar vote. Opponents quickly gathered twice the signatures they needed to put the 2 referenda on the 1980 June ballot, Measures A and B. And, I don't know if some people might remember that campaign or not, but it was pretty ugly. The No on A and B campaign used the same playbook as in Miami. Slogans included, "Vote no for the sake of the children," "Enough is enough," "Don't let it spread," and "Keep it private." As I mentioned in the book, the opponents' campaign material emphasized the stereotype of gay men as sexual deviants and child molesters who wanted their behavior legitimized. In one section of their literature, the opponents claim that gays have the compulsion to flaunt their sex in public. Their literature stated that bus stations, parks, and bowling alleys are haunted by gay guys. Random and reckless selection of partners is the trademark. The fact that the stranger is likely to be a policeman or sadomasochist never seems to occur to them. This is the core of homosexuality, the flyers read. And this was the type of crap that was showing up in everyone's mailbox throughout the county. Supporters of the non-discrimination ordinance never had a chance. It wasn't just a loss, it was a bloodbath. By a margin of 4-1 or 75% to 25%, both measures went down in flames, countering any popular belief that Santa Clara County was always a bastion of progressive politics, particularly for its LGBTQ residents. These are just astonishing figures. 75% saying, no, we don't believe there should be any non-discrimination ordinances for LGBTQ people. The local queer community was demoralized, as must be the case currently for people in states that keep passing anti-trans, anti-gender affirming care, and anti-LGBTQ laws, each more hateful than the last. But here begins my journey. This anti-gay environment had a personal effect on me. So prevalent were the attitudes in 1984 that a San Jose assemblyman with the rhyming name of Alistair McAllister wrote an op-ed in the San Jose Mercury News pleading Governor Deukmejian to veto a law passed by the legislature to make it illegal to discriminate based on sexual orientation. Again, there was no protections. The state legislature finally passes a law and it goes to the governor's desk. McAllister said signing the bill would give the wrongful practice of homosexuality legal, social, and political legitimacy. And his statement stunned me. I was a 31-year-old gay man, out to friends, but not to others. I was well aware of the hatred and persecution that LGBTQ people faced, but this was the first time that I heard someone phrase it so bluntly. Basically, it was you, Ken Yeager, and your kind are undeserving of any benefits provided by society. Outraged by the time I finished reading McAllister's article, I felt my contributions, along with those of my LGBTQ friends, were not just devalued, but unwanted. Putting the paper down, I told myself, Ken, if you don't fight for your rights to be a part of this community, no one else will. I realized that if I were to have standing in San Jose, I would have to fight for it. I decided to challenge the assembly member by using the weapon of his choice, an op-ed in the Mercury News. There was just one minor hiccup. I wasn't completely out. My byline in the Mercury News meant that I would come out to the newspaper's entire Bay Area readership. I knew the publicity might cause me problems. I wondered if my political friends would think that I was being too out, or if I would ever be hired to manage another political campaign. As luck would have it, I was working for Congressman Don Edwards, and some of you might remember Don Edwards, just a saint. I was working for him at the time, and I worried that he might not think having an openly gay staffer was a political plus. Remember, this was a time when there weren't any out political staffers, but he didn't hesitate for a second in telling me to go ahead and submit it, which I did, thus changing the whole trajectory of my life for the better. After I came out publicly in 1984, I was chomping at the bit to see what political talents I had. I had been active in local politics for 10 years, had worked for a number of elected officials. I had spent time in Washington, D.C., and like so many people who have not yet found their career path, I was ready to find the right opportunity to make a difference. But when, where? I believe that one goal that any LGBTQ person has is the wish to make the world better for the next generation than it was for themselves. I sensed that my calling was to help the LGBTQ community gain a political foothold so we could be full participants in society and government. But how? Or more specifically, how in San Jose? As a way for the phoenix to rise from the ashes, in 1984, I joined up with lesbian activist Wigsy Sievertson to co-found the LGBTQ political organization called the Bay Area Municipal Elections Committee, or BAYMEC. And some of you might know Wigsy. She's still around and still kicking and as feisty as ever. But let me tell you what we were up against 4 years after losing 75 to 25%. So remember, this was only like 4 years from then. When we started our endorsement process, we were a political action committee, endorse candidates and give money, which, you know, just regular political organization. But we worried that few candidates would want to be associated with us, given the climate at the time. One Republican assembly member and later congressman responded that he meant no disrespect, but he did not want or seek our endorsement. One Democratic assembly member that we endorsed and made a contribution to, returned the check, writing that he was not in a position to accept our contribution. Most candidates never even sent the questionnaire back. So I remember like it was yesterday. It was the funniest thing. Here we were, a political organization, and almost nobody wanted our endorsement and nobody was taking our money. And I said, well, so much for this impressive counter offensive to the religious right. And yes, even more examples. The defeats of Measure A and B even affected strong civil rights allies, believe it or not, like Congressman Norm Mineta, a saint, and Leon Panetta, a saint. But even for them, the backlash that happened with A and B was too strong. Both of them had been previous co-sponsors of a national gay and lesbian rights bill, but withdrew their support after the overwhelming defeats of these two measures. It was no small matter that Congressman Mineta's district included the Almaden Valley, which many people consider the Bible Belt of Santa Clara County. In addition, Congressman Leon Panetta would not go on as a co-signer on the national bill for many, many years. But BAYMEC worked tirelessly with both of them over many years until they both agreed to be signers. Throughout the late 1980s and 90s, BAYMEC met with elected officials one-on-one discussions to answer any questions about our issues. This was still a time that people did not know many gay and lesbian people and often had preconceived notions. These meetings proved enormously effective, particularly with Republican representatives. It didn't hurt to take a group photo afterwards that I would put on the front page of the BAYMEC newsletter, providing evidence of BAYMEC's growing influence. Then came AIDS. So many young men and others dying with no cure. God's retribution for the gay lifestyle, the religious right said. On a personal level, and here I'll be very personal, it was in March 1986 that I learned a friend of mine had died of AIDS. I was saddened by his death, and because of a brief encounter that we had a year earlier, there was a possibility that I might have become infected. I took the HIV test and was relieved to know that I wasn't positive for the virus. I think back on all the people who have died of AIDS, their lives cut short and their potential never reached. Testing negative has given me 38 plus years to have a wonderful career and life, 38 extra years that so many people did not get. It's one of the reasons I have worked so hard on the Getting to Zero campaign in Santa Clara County. It's the zero infections, zero deaths, and zero stigma related to AIDS. It was in 1986 that I stood before the County Board of Supervisors and urged them to allocate the first dollars to combat HIV/AIDS in the county. Not only was the funding granted, but Supervisor Suzanne Wilson moved to create a countywide HIV/AIDS task force and appointed me as chair. Our current HIV/AIDS programs and services have their roots in those actions. Organizing the LGBT community was key in gaining political power. All right, so the whole thing was, how can we gain some power? Our enemies were enormous help with this when in 1986, Lyndon LaRouche, if people remember that name, quite an oddball, he got enough signatures to put an initiative on the ballot that would have led to the quarantining of people with HIV/AIDS. This resulted in Rigsy and me running the successful No on 64 campaign in the South Bay. Any lingering skepticism about whether BAYMEC knew what it was doing dissipated, and we've been regarded as an effective group ever since. But people are really surprised that there was such an initiative that would have permitted the quarantining of people with AIDS. The initiative did not win, and so we wanted to have a celebratory dinner to thank all of our volunteers. We decided to have a spaghetti feed at the gymnasium of Archbishop Mitty High School. So this was our big celebratory dinner here. We didn't know at the time that this would be considered BAYMEC's first dinner, and also just amazing. So here we all are. We only had one elected official in attendance, and that was San Jose Councilwoman Iola Williams, another saint. One elected official. As BAYMEC's membership grew, so did our political clout. After our first dinner, the BAYMEC dinner grew larger and larger each year as we put more effort into it. By the mid-1990s, it was, oddly enough, the political dinner to go to, with over 500 people attending, including 100 elected officials and candidates. What a turnaround it's been. It's hard to believe that BAYMEC is now celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. Yay! Yay, go team! As important, BAYMEC began collaborating with other minority groups on their issues, and they with ours. These included the NAACP, ACI, MOXA, the Central Labor Council, the Democratic Party, and the County Human Relations Commission. Collectively, the more we organized, the stronger we all became. And things began to change for me. Up until 1992, no out LGBTQ person had ever been elected to any office in Santa Clara County at any level. In fact, only a handful had been elected in the entire country. This is just how odd it was. Gay people just could not get elected. A local political office, often overlooked by those interested in serving as a public office holder, is that of a community college trustee. In California, these elected officials have real authority, making policy on issues dealing with curriculum, vocational education, academic standards, collective bargaining, and so on. The community college district where I lived was the San Jose Evergreen Community College District. I set my sights on this race because I knew the position was the right office at the right time for me. I had received my PhD in education from Stanford and had been teaching full-time at San Jose State University. I was aware of some of the academic hardships that transfer students were experiencing, and I wanted to strengthen academic excellence in the college district. I don't look like this anymore. Santa Clara County got its first openly gay elected official when I won a seat on the San Jose Evergreen Community College, receiving 50% of the vote amongst 6 candidates. Do you see that? So pretty amazing, just about 50% with 6 candidates. I was not ready for all the attention I received afterwards. I received many calls and letters from friends congratulating me. Friends on the East called to say that they had heard about my victory on CNN. Flowers arrived. The only time since then that I was happier in a professional setting was a month later when I was sworn in as a trustee. And there I am with that big smile. A picture taken of me at the ceremony captured the widest smile physically possible. Finally, the lavender ceiling had been broken. This was followed by a run for state assembly, which I discuss in great depth in the book. At the time, there hadn't been an LGBTQ person ever elected to the state legislature, so this was a big deal. Again, at the time, there had never been a gay person elected to the state legislature. 0. There's another picture there with some of my students, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with San Jose State. We included the picture of me running, so I was looking healthy. And this was a time of still AIDS was was still very much the issue. Plus, it's always good to look healthy. I understand, but it was everything was very deliberate. Everything was very deliberate. Towards the end, Dave Cortese, who I think a lot of people know of, was also running. He put out a hit piece against me, saying that if you put your family first, Watch out for Ken Yeager. He's an ultra-liberal who fights for his agenda, not yours.
Well, his dad voted.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Thank you for remembering that, Carmen. It's in the book. It's hard to quantify how many votes I lost because of the mailer, but the result was that I came in second, with Mike Honda coming in first. And I discuss in the book how Dave came to accept that he did do a gay hit piece, and it was gay baiting. But we have become friends since then. We had many conversations afterwards, and he's been nothing but supportive of me and the LGBTQ community. Next came running for city council from the Willow Glen Rose Garden neighborhood. One hurdle that any candidate has to overcome is the belief that they will only focus on issues related to their interest group and not on the whole community. This is especially true when they are the first, because voters don't have anyone to compare them to. So any group, I mean, this is certainly true for women way back when as well. People just didn't know how they were going to react. And part of the negative campaigns used against me was that I was better suited to run in San Francisco, since I would only work on gay issues, because that must be all that gay politicians do, which of course is total nonsense. It was absolutely true. Still, homophobia reared its nasty head. Remember, I'm still the only openly gay person elected to anything in the entire county. Many anti-gay actions were taken by my opponent's supporters. We heard reports from my supporters that people who had my lawn signs on their lawns, that people supporting my opponent would go to their door and ask them if they knew that I was gay. And most people were shooed away, but some friends saw their neighbor signs taken down. The evangelical right was also on alert. The pastor of the Willow Glen First Baptist Church sent a letter to all ministers in the district condemning the homosexual lifestyle. Quote, "We think the Bible teaches God to love everybody, but I think the Bible is clear on saying homosexuality is unnatural and wrong," end quote. I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm glad he cleared that issue up. The homophobia was so pervasive that a political cartoon in the San Jose Metro captured the mood very well. By showing people getting off a bus in front of my opponent's campaign office. They included a neo-Nazi, a Ku Klux Klansman, and some Hell's Angel types. The caption underneath the drawing said it all. "We got here as soon as we could. How can we help?" As the election grew closer, I became more anxious. And if you've ever worked on a campaign, you become more anxious. Like right now, this just made me grit my teeth and work even harder. I knew how high the stakes were for me, politically and personally. First, I wanted to prove that a qualified gay man could win in a large suburban city. Second, once elected, I wanted to show that I could represent the whole community. If I lost, I knew it would be many years before another seat would open up. I knew that my opponent wanted to win, but I knew I wanted it more. With all the strength I had within me, I was willing myself to win. Election day finally came. I went on my normal 3-mile jog. Volunteers were out holding signs for me at the entrance of freeway on-ramps and contacting people who we knew were supporters to make sure that they voted. I called up the people who were especially helpful to thank them. My partner was very sweet. He mentioned that I had done everything within my power to win the race, but it was now out of my hands. People were either willing to support a qualified gay candidate or they weren't. After all of the phone calls were made, there really wasn't much else to do except wait until the polls closed at 8 p.m. Just as it was with other primaries, my victory party was at a restaurant called Lou's Village, that some people might remember, an old Italian unionized restaurant with autographed photos on the walls with people like Rosemary Clooney and Tony Bennett. Oh, I'm glad people are nodding their heads. God knows when they ate there, but there the pictures were. Years later, I knew I had arrived when they asked me if I would give them a photo to put on the wall. So that was sweet. By 10 p.m., there wasn't enough of the votes had been counted and posted for the results of the election to be clear. It was then that I went on stage and the large crowd grew quiet. I want everyone to know, I shouted into the microphone, that I just called my mother. Long pause. And I told her we had won. The room erupted with applause. Yay. Yeah, so there we are. I am proud of my accomplishments as a councilman, including a number of firsts. I was the first to raise the rainbow flag at San Jose City Hall. It was the first time any gay flag had been raised at a city hall, so I consider myself the grandfather of rainbow flag raising in the county. The first to have the San Jose Council approve a Pride Proclamation in 2001 as well. And now we have rainbow flag raising and proclamations galore, but at the time it was very rare. I was able to get approval of a long-term lease at the Billy DeFrank Center as well. And I think that's the next picture. Yeah, here, there's the raising of the flag. And then the LGBTQ Community Center. In May of 2005, I still had 2.5 years left on my San Jose City Council seat. But as any politician who is subject to term limits, and our county assessor is not subject to term limits, the hourglass quickly depletes of sand. I had thoroughly enjoyed being on the city council and wasn't sure if I was ready to leave. Looking around, I knew that my only real option was an office few people were aware of, but carries a great deal of authority and responsibility, the County Board of Supervisors. The seat was held by someone who was termed out, so no incumbent was running, so I decided to run. The San Jose Mercury News gave me a very strong endorsement. It read how I had proved my leadership on the council by tackling tough issues, such as lobbying reform and standing up to Mayor Gonzalez on matters of ethics and openness. They added that as chair of the Ethics Task Force, I deftly handled competing interests and brought about serious reform. Going into the election, my campaign team was optimistic about my winning, even predicting that I would get over the magic mark of 50% to avoid a runoff. To me, that seemed like an impossibly high bar. Maybe because of the assembly race and the council race were so awful, the universe decided that I had suffered enough and finally paved a smoother election path for me. I say jokingly, all that jokingly, because it really was all of the hard work in the community and making friends, not enemies, that actually helped me surpass, thank you, the 50% total. After all the votes were counted, I had received 52%. And to say that people were really stunned was quite an understatement, since the other two people running were very well known and incumbent politicians as well. As a supervisor, I focus mainly on health issues, believing that health is the greatest gift you can give somebody. In the book, I go into all of the health programs and health initiatives that I was able to get passed, including the first gender-affirming medical clinic in 2018, the African American Roots Community Clinic in 2017, and the LGBTQ Behavioral Health Wellness Center in 2020. And I'm very proud of creating the the country's very first county office of LGBTQ affairs in 2015. As a longtime supporter of same-sex marriage, and as someone threatened with a recall due to my advocacy of supporting equal benefits to married San Jose LGBTQ employees in 2004, I was over the moon when on January 17th, 2008, the California Supreme Court ruled that same-sex couples could get married in California. As a supervisor, I was, by some quirky law that I never understood, I was able to conduct marriages. So I had the honor of marrying our first same-sex couples on the 10th floor in the conference room with all of the media and the supporters. A setback occurred months later when Prop 8 passed, but we won the right to marry again when the US Supreme Court ruled in 2013. And the lines were even longer that day at the county, because that's where people get married. And I married 26 couples that day. Since being termed out of the Board of Supervisors at the end of 2018, I progressed from elected official to LGBTQ historian as the executive director of the nonprofit arm of BAYMEC, the BAYMEC Community Foundation. So we've been able to work on a lot of very important historical projects. As I was sort of referring, that I was afraid that this history would all get lost, that no one would ever know that anything sort of happened here. And I sort of felt a calling to be the one, because of my position, to see if I could begin to get all of this recorded. So with initial funding from the county, as it turned out, after I had left, I never took a vote on it. We received a grant to start this LGBTQ history project called Queer Silicon Valley. And again, we've been very busy over the last 5 years, talks about some of the things here. But if you're interested, so we set up this website that contains as much information as I could and my students could collect and put into this website. It has, again, goes back to 50 years of events. It includes numerous oral histories, including those of Sunnyvale's two queer council members, Lisa Cisneros and Richard Mellinger. So if you want to know more about them, they're on the elected officials page. So there's just a lot of information. And I have a little card there that has the website if you want to get more information about it. So we do the website, and then we decided, well, let's do a museum exhibit because museums are great. And so I'm somebody who keeps a lot of things. I haven't moved in like 35 years, so it's all in the garage. And so it's been great. And so I was able to, have all of this material that we then put into this exhibit. Not that I had these 3 outfits, but that we had at History San Jose for a year. It opened right after the lockdown. Sorry? Yeah. So, but anyway, it has just a lot of stuff in it, and it was very successful, and I was very glad that we were able to do that. And so let's keep going. So we then did a documentary, and so we interviewed 14, 15 people, all with different stories to tell about things going on in San Jose and Santa Clara County. And we had a big opening at the Hammer Theater in San Jose State, and so that was a lot of fun. And it's on YouTube, and all you have to really do is put Queer Silicon Valley, and it should pop up. And so next week then, what we did is we got a budget allocation from the state to be able to open up this museum. So this is in downtown San Jose on Market Street, right across from Cesar Chavez Park, sort of by the Martins, the old Fairmont Hotel. It's in that sort of area. And this is sort of the office here. And so we put a lot of the material that was at the History San Jose, Plus, we have a rotating space, and we put in information about the gay men's chorus and the women's rainbow chorus. And so we plan then to have that rotating. And we have a 3-year lease, and hopefully we can even do it a little longer than that. And then wrote the book. So at this point, I'm running out of projects for this LGBTQ history project, but anyway, it's been nice to have that. But I'll end with this thought. The right to be a full participant in society has been part of my mission since that Sunday morning in 1984, when I had to make the decision whether to come out publicly as a gay man and fight for my rights to exist or to remain in the closet. And I chose the former. Looking back, it has become clear to me how important the role of government is in helping LGBTQ people be part of our national discourse. Society is all the better because of LGBTQ citizens, and our government must continue to recognize us in every legal, social, and political way. Hear, hear. The fight for equality never ends. Thank you. Thank you.